Okay, quick update. I finally decided what I'm going to do to finish this table. I've done lots and lots of test samples, which I'm going to show in a second, of a bunch of 2K polys, polyesters. They're all catalyzed finishes, but I'm finding out that they're not all as hard as I expected them to be, and I can basically put a thumbnail scratch in all of them. Okay, here's my here's a bunch of different sample boards that I've been testing finishes. I'm testing Ilva, I-L-V-A, they're out of Italy, 2K UV acrylic polyurethanes. They're two-part catalyzed. You're mixing about a 10 to 20% hardener mixture. And anyway, this one here, these three boards here are just regular walnut. I treated them with the Watco oil, and then I sprayed the sealer, and then the finish. This one's 15 degree, and this one's 35, and this one's 65. You can see the sheen differences right there. I kind of like that 35. Then I tried their high gloss with Watco oil, and you can see how it really pops the grain. But then I also tried it without Watco oil. So that sample right there is without Watco oil, and it looks basically identical. So don't need any oil to pop the grain. The Ilva sealers pop the grain like crazy. Now just putting a raw 2K 35 degree with no sealer on this board, it's pretty dead looking. Doesn't pop the grain whatsoever. I think on the other side, this is with a sealer, and again 35 degree top coat, no Watco oil. So that worked out pretty good. What I ran into in all these samples is I can take my thumbnail and you can see the mark right there that I just left. I mean, I could scratch this stuff. So my thinking is, what's the point? Now, I also did a sample board on the back of this one. On the back of this one here, this is Ilva's 15 degree, no Watco oil. I just did the sealer and the 15 degree. Now, for whatever reason, this one's pretty scratch resistant. It's pretty hard. I did 3 coats, sanded it, and then I did another 1 or 2 coats just to build up a little thicker finish. But if I really push with my thumb, see that right there? I just dented it in. And I don't know if that's kind of too critical of a test. You guys tell me. Now here's a sample here. This is Mohawk's 2K ISO free poly. This is a satin, and I just basically sprayed it right on the wood. It's, you know, any of these products are basically self-sealing on raw wood. But again, look at the scratches. I can scratch this stuff, and I got 4 coats on here. Now, you know, if I just scratch like that, it doesn't leave any marks. But okay, so if I take my thumbnail and I dig in, I'm just crushing the wood, denting the wood. So I don't know if I can blame the finish or I'm just too critical for testing. Now this is polyester, and you can get this with a UV in it. This stuff is gloss, which I don't want on my table, but I have another application. I'm doing a spalted maple top. And this stuff is used a lot in the aerospace industry, marine industry, boats. I use a sealer at Simtech out of California. This is the nasty polyester you got to use in all these finishes. I've got a air supplied face mask. I'm not using you know, respirator cartridges because they're too. You never really know when one isn't working. So I got one of those systems from S&S or SAS. But this stuff is freaking hard. I think I read somewhere this is 80% as hard as glass. So another idea I had was putting this polyester coat. You can top coat this with this other stuff. So do a polyester coat on top of a table. You scuff sand it, and this stuff is so hard it's even hard to sand, I guess. But scuff sand it down and then top coat it with like a 15-degree Ilva. Then if any damage ever happens to the Ilva, you sand that Ilva stuff off back down to the polyester, and then you'd recoat. So that's one thing. I have not tried that in a test panel yet. I think I could just scuff sand this down and try to top coat it. But as far as my table goes, with the epoxy down the center, the epoxy's had a month to set up. It's almost as hard as that polyester. And I'm just going to leave it and polish it up and call it a day, because that's pretty much kind of the look I want anyway. So that's it for now. Okay, so on the top so far, I've got 3 coats of natural Watco oil, and then I'm basically sanded it in down to about 400 grit. Now what I'm doing is, since I got that epoxy and the wood and the copper, I'm basically putting in another coat, and I've got I went over the table dry with 360 grit with the vacuum on. Now I've got the vacuum turned off, and I'm just using my 3mm orbital festool, and I'm just basically doing a coat with the oil. I'll just do a quick deal here, and then I'm going to work my way up through 1,000 grit, 2,000 grit, and 3,000 grit. This is 800 grit. Then I just run this until it's dry, like right over here. This has been sanded and dry, and you can see I'll just run that till it's dry. And basically I'm just doing a little bit of extra grain filling. I've already basically grain filled by sanding in the oil. So I'm just going to continue this process. And basically, my rag is kind of getting a little bit more on there. I'm going to work my way over here a little bit. I don't want to wipe it off. I always tend to do that. So I want to get it so it's like this down here where it's dry. And then I'm going to come back on the next coat, and then any little, I don't want to wipe the fines that have been ground into the grain. I don't want to wipe that off by wiping it down. So I'm just going to leave this. Okay, so this is after, I guess, sanding with 800 grit with the natural Watco oil. I ended up, took about 30 minutes to do each side in 4 sections, and I'm also doing that epoxy, which should get clearer and clearer on the surface as I work my way up through the grits. You can kind of see that vertical wall in there where I had planed out the epoxy, the bad epoxy that bubbled so bad. Anyway, then Tomorrow I'll do 1,000 grit. More for the epoxy. I'll do the wood also. I didn't put a lot of oil on the top. I put a ton of oil on the bottom. I decided just to go with the oil and not use any film finishes. I didn't like any of the film finishes. I mean, they look great, but it just didn't look like this. And so you just don't bring out those colors. So I'm going to leave it with just Danish oil, easily repairable.